I never imagined I'd need bulldozers to protect my family farm. But there I was, standing in the fading light, pointing furiously at the Jersey barriers that blocked my only driveway. The HOA president, Cynthia Reynolds, stood there in her bright orange hard hat and safety vest, clutching a clipboard to her chest with a smug grin. Behind her, massive concrete slabs separated my soybean fields on one side from my barley fields on the other. A crane loomed in the distance, still maneuvering more barriers into place. "You should have taken our offer," she said coolly. What she didn't know was that the demolition machines rumbling faintly on the horizon weren't just rented. I owned the whole company. How would she react when my fleet rolled in at sunrise? For 47 years, I'd worked this 120-acre farm, a legacy my grandfather secured with his war bonds after surviving World War II. This land wasn't just dirt and crops. It was our family's history, carved out through decades of toil and sacrifice. Everything shifted 3 years ago when Pinewood Meadows estates sprouted across the road, bringing clipped lawns, HOA rules, and urban newcomers who griped about my roosters waking them on Sundays. Their pride and joy was a lavish entrance, complete with imported Spanish marble fountains and a guardhouse, built uncomfortably close to my property line. I'd raised objections at planning meetings, but they brushed me off as some outdated farmer clinging to the past. Little did they know that, despite my beat-up 15-year-old truck and worn-out jacket, I also owned Harper Vosson's Demolition, the outfit that had leveled ground for every big project in the region since 1985. The same company their developer had courted but deemed too pricey. My father taught me 2 key lessons growing up: respect the land that sustains you, and always have a plan B. While most local farmers buckled under the weight of corporate agriculture, I branched into demolition. What began as tearing down neighbors' old sheds grew into the biggest operation across 3 counties. But to the HOA crowd, I was just a stubborn relic, a nuisance blocking their vision of a flawless suburban enclave. They never bothered to dig deeper. Trouble brewed when Cynthia Reynolds took over as HOA president. A former corporate lawyer from Boston, she'd retired to embrace rural life, while seemingly bent on scrubbing every trace of it away. First came the letters, complaints about my tractor's rumble, the scent of cattle, and how my unsightly farm dragged down their property values. Then the citations rolled in, mud from my fields spilling onto their pristine street after rain, my barns peeling paint, harvesting past their 7 p.m. noise curfew. When I pointed out my farm predated their development by decades, Cynthia smirked and said, "The world moves on, Mr. Harper. Maybe you should too." Then came a certified letter claiming a new survey showed my driveway, the same gravel path my grandfather laid in 1946, encroached on their common area by 2 feet. Their solution? A $750 monthly easement fee plus a $5,000 one-time charge. My attorney, Tom Bradley, a buddy since grade school, reviewed it and scowled. "John, this survey doesn't line up with county records. Something's off." I tried reasoning with them at their monthly meeting, a rookie mistake. Fresh from the fields, I walked into their swanky clubhouse with its gleaming chandelier and polished floors, feeling their stares rake over me like I'd tracked in manure. "Mr. Harper," Cynthia said from her sleek desk, "we get your fondness for your little grain setup, but Pinewood Meadows is a $40 million investment in raising this area's quality of life." I shot back, "My farm fed this county before you could buy that designer scarf." Gasps rippled through the room. Cynthia's smile tightened. "The board's decided. Pay the easement or find another way in. You've got 30 days. I left knowing this wasn't about 2 feet of gravel. It was about forcing me out for their Phase 2 expansion. The fees were just the opening salvo. Last Tuesday, I'd been at the hospital with my daughter, celebrating my first grandson's birth, one of the best days of my life. But when I got home that evening, my joy turned to fury. There, at my farm's only entrance, flanked by golden barley and towering soybeans, stood a wall of Jersey barriers. Not flimsy cones. These were 3-ton concrete slabs, the kind used on freeways. Cynthia supervised in her orange gear as a crane dropped another block. I slammed my truck to a stop, my old baseball cap shading my eyes as I stormed toward her, finger jabbing at the barricade cutting me off from 120 acres of my heritage. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I roared, my hands shaking with rage. She glanced up, that smug half-smile intact. Enforcing property lines, Mr. Harper, per the notice we sent last week. Notice? What notice? I've been with my daughter at the hospital. Not our problem, she said icily. It was delivered. The board voted to reclaim our land, effective now. There's a service road on your north side. Use it. That service road was a muddy track through a wetland, useless for vehicles and legally untouchable. She knew it. They all did. As a worker poured more concrete, Cynthia checked her watch. If that's all, I've got a book club at 6. I stood there, watching them seal off my family's lifeline, my fists balled tight. This wasn't a dispute anymore. It was a siege. You don't know what you've started? I said under my breath. She barely looked up. Threats won't help your case, Mr. Harper. Accept it and move on. I drove off, parking half a mile away and trekking through my back field just to reach my house. With every muddy step, my resolve solidified. They'd timed this perfectly, striking while I was distracted by new life. They'd messed with the wrong farmer. That night, after hauling feed to my stranded livestock through the muck, I spread 70 years of property records across my kitchen table. My hands still shook, but my mind sharpened with purpose. The proof was overwhelming. 1,946 surveys, county easement files, aerial shots showing my driveway unchanged for decades, and the clincher, environmental protections locking their alternative road as untouchable wetland since 1997. I called my son, David, who ran Harper Vasson's demolition day-to-day while I tended the farm. Dad, you okay? Heard you're a grandpa. I am, I said, voice steady. And someone's trying to keep me from seeing him by blocking my home. After I explained, he paused, then asked, how much equipment do you want? All of it, I said. Every bulldozer, excavator, dump truck, and the concrete crushers from the interstate job. That's over $2 million in gear, Dad. This is over a century of our legacy. Be here at 5 a.m. Next, I rang Tom, rousing him from sleep. Tom, you said their survey stank. Pull every record, easements, surveys, everything, for my farm and Pinewood Meadows. Be here at 6 a.m. With it all. Hanging up, I glanced at the faded photo above my fireplace. My grandfather beside his first tractor, this farmhouse in the background. 3 generations had fought for this land through floods, droughts, and recessions. No manicured development or ex-lawyer playing dictator would erase that. I dug out my dad's old Surveyor Transit from the closet, the one he'd used in a 1970s boundary spat, and spent hours cross-checking old markers with satellite images. By 3 a.m., I'd proven their survey was a sham. Not only was my driveway mine, but their fancy entrance trespassed on my land by several feet. Tomorrow wouldn't just bring machines, it'd bring reckoning. I didn't sleep. Instead, I pored over old photos showing my driveway across decades. A 1983 shot clearly revealed survey markers. Markers mysteriously shifted in their new survey. At 4:45 a.m., I stood on my hill, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. Then I heard it. The growl of heavy machinery cresting the eastern ridge. They came in a convoy, silhouetted against the dawn, 5 bulldozers, 3 excavators, 7 dump trucks, a towering crane, 2 barrier crushers, and 30-plus crew in pickups. David led them, an American flag flapping from his truck. They lined up along my eastern boundary, a quiet but undeniable presence. By 6:30 a.m., Pinewood Meadows stirred. Residents shuffled out in pajamas, clutching mugs, gawking at the machinery walling their community's edge. Tom arrived, unloading files. Found some gems, he said, spreading papers on his hood. At 7:15, Cynthia's silver BMW screeched to a halt. She stepped out, silk PJs under a blazer, face twisted in shock. What is this? She demanded, striding toward me. I stood calm, hands in my overalls. Just clearing a hazard from my property, ma'am. Her eyes widened as she took in the lineup. Millions in equipment, Harper Vasson's logos gleaming in the sun. You can't, she stammered. David stepped up, handing her his card. David Harper, president of Harper Vasson's Demolition. We handle obstacles, concrete, legal, you name it. Cynthia's cool mask cracked. This is intimidation. I'll call the sheriff. Please do, Tom said, adjusting his glasses. I'd love to show him these records, especially where your entrance sits on Harper land. Residents murmured, confusion shifting to anger, not at me, but at her. I nodded to David. A bulldozer roared to life, its rumble cutting the morning air. Cynthia waved residents back. Go home. The board's handling this. They should hear this, I said loudly, since their fees will fund the lawsuit I'm filing today. Her face reddened. You're trespassing. Actually, Tom cut in, all gears on Mr. Harper's land, per county records since 1946. Your survey? Fraudulent. Markers moved 38 inches from their original spots. See these photos. He handed her a folder. Plus, your entrance encroaches 7 feet on his land, and your pond drainage violates federal wetland laws. A man in a robe stepped forward. Dr. Robert Klein, retired engineer. I flagged drainage issues during construction. They said it was fixed. Was it? Fixed by dumping water on my protected wetland, I said. Another resident piped up. Is that why our fees jumped 20% last quarter? The crowd bristled. I signaled again. 2 bulldozers edged closer, blades down. Last chance, Cynthia. Move those barriers, or we will, along with your entrance sitting on my land. Residents shouted now, demanding answers about secret votes and misused funds. Tom dropped another bomb. The survey firm's owned by Cynthia's brother-in-law. The barrier crew? Her son's company. The crowd erupted. A woman, Cynthia's neighbor Lisa, pushed through. You rushed this while the Thompsons were at their daughter's wedding, and hit John when he was at the hospital. You planned this. Cynthia paled. These claims are absurd. Absurd. I snapped. I missed my grandson's first night because of this. My livestock nearly starved. You think you can bully me off my land? I gave her an hour to act. After that, we clear it all, including your entrance. You can't, she sputtered. He can, Tom said, and my injunction at 9 a.m. will secure his access while this hits court. Dr. Klein held up his phone. County GIS shows the driveway's his. They want it for a second entrance if he sells. The truth clicked. This was a land grab. Phase 2 changed, a resident yelled. Why weren't we told? A sheriff's cruiser rolled up. Cynthia relaxed until Sheriff Bill Tatum stepped out, my niece's father-in-law, and a 20-year farm customer. Morning, John. Property trouble. A man in a suit, ex-Judge Henry Grayson, spoke up. I've seen enough here for fraud and fund misuse. We demand an emergency meeting today. Residents moved to suspend Cynthia, hands shot up. Grayson took charge. Motion carries. I'll lead until elections. Mr. Harper, those barriers go now, at our expense. Cynthia retreated as residents turned on her. Within an hour, the barriers were gone, her scheme in ruins. An audit later showed she'd siphoned $95,000 to her family's firms. She fled, her house for sale before the dust settled. Pinewood Meadows shifted gears under Grayson and Lisa, securing my driveway and fixing their drainage. They launched a farm-to-table program with my crops and opened my wetland as a nature preserve. Last month, we held a harvest festival, my grandson's first hayride alongside new friends from the development. One barrier remains, now a stand base where neighbors buy my produce. This land was worth defending and sharing. Sometimes, you need bulldozers to build bridges.